now tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth, Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
We had martini already.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, thanks.
Did you? All right. Bye-bye.
It comes in a can and you can get it in a bucket. I'm going to say it louder this time.
There you go. All right. Comes in a can. You can order it in a bucket. What do you think? 943-1061.
And think of specific brands. Don't just say generalization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time is 7:28.
Big news. I have some important news for you.
Interesting news.
It's Blake and Darren's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
Cayman's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Good morning, Sandy. How are you?
Hey, guys. Good morning. Happy Friday.
You too. Happy Friday. It's old school Fridays. We're throwing back to 1982. So I hope you got a song here at the end. All right.
Yes, I did ask some listeners about song selection yesterday, so I think I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. Well, what do we got on a Friday? What were your thoughts on the press conference yesterday?
To be honest, I only got to listen to it in bits and pieces, but we are going to have the premiere back on today.
Oh, okay.
And
Good for you.
the sense that I got is that they're priming people for that reopening date.
Yeah.
Because evidently some people need that hand holding.
Mhm.
Other people are just like, throw the borders open, we're ready. But I think, the government has to recognize that they have to meet the needs of different types of people. And so maybe that's why they have more patience than I do.
I like the idea
I don't know.
that they are trying to get the rapid flow test in place, because I think that is needed.
Yes.
Because they're struggling, Aaron and I were talking earlier, they're struggling now with all these PCR tests with thousands a day, and you have to wait a couple of days to get an answer. This rapid flow test will give you an answer in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine the borders opening and they're struggling to get, a couple thousand tests done. You could wait days to find out. And then in the meantime, you'll be stuck in quarantine. So
Right.
I like the fact that they're putting this in place. They said next week there's going to be a press conference and they're going to announce a date for opening.
Well, what was that whole thing when they changed quarantine? They were like the 22nd, it was going to change on September. If you booked before September 22nd or whatever, then you would still be on the old rules. And then after that, it switches to the new rules. Because then my friend's mom came and literally on the 22nd, it was the day she booked. And they're like, no, not on the 22nd, before the 22nd. It's like, well, then say the 21st. Don't say the 22nd.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, she told me that. And I was like, oh, that sucks.
I have a story for you, though.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a pilot. Private pilot. I like airplanes, everything aviation. I'm one of those nerds that will stop at the airport and watch the planes land if I'm driving home. Like yes, now that the BA is landing around 4:00, I lucked out where I was going to. I knew it was getting ready to land, so I stopped at the airport. Then I see the BA circling for about 45 minutes, and then there's there's another private plane that's circling. There's a Twin Otter that's circling, all waiting to land. Turns out they switched up the runway because there was a huge rain cell off of the harbor, right? So they had to come around by Prospect and land that way on runway 26. Anyway, it was a huge mess. But what I saw was a Saab express plane, and I thought, okay, this is from the BRAC, right? And then with these apps I have, you can see where it's coming from, and the express was coming from La Ceiba.
That's right.
Yeah, that's because they couldn't fly the other plane because
you gotta sign up for those CMR news alerts there, Blake, because you would have known first thing in the morning that apparently La Ceiba, Honduras, their international airport, did some changes in terms of what planes they can handle. So if you're a layperson, the bottom line is if certain size planes are going into an airport, there's different categories, category ratings for that airport, right?
Right.
So they downgraded themselves from a category 7 to category 6. And the jet can't fly into La Ceiba or any other airport unless it's a category 7. So that's, what's required. And that speaks to how the type of safety protocols they have in place, including how many fire trucks.
Right. I was going to say they downgraded their fire services, I found out.
Yeah, that's what
So that means you can't fly in the 737 MAX any longer. So they got to fly
smaller.
It's got to be smaller. So apparently the new international airport is supposed to replace Tegucigalpa, which is like a super dangerous airport. So in an attempt to push all the international traffic through it, they downgraded their fire categories. And now only smaller planes can fly through there.
So where are they? Do they want people flying in and out of now? Not.
There's going to be a new airport somewhere.
Oh, they're building one.
I guess.
I mean,
so
is that an important thing to do?
I think what happened yesterday, Blake, is it was completely unannounced. They just did it yesterday morning. People were literally sitting on the jet ready to go to Honduras when they were informed the jet can't come.
Oh, wow.
I don't think this was anything that was planned based on any future plans to build an airport. This was, right, we've had to deploy that fire truck somewhere else, and we just don't have it in La Ceiba at the airport. So they literally changed it. Initially, people were thinking that Honduras flight would have been canceled, and that's why we were contacted by people on the flight. And then Cayman Airways, stepped up and quickly decided to send the Saab, and they had to basically do multiple trips with that smaller plane because, of course, that can't carry a full load of people, especially with COVID restrictions
and the supplies, though.
Right?
Weren't they taking those?
No, those supplies largely went on Tuesday's flight.
Oh, okay. So they got there in time. I was thinking, oh no, these are like,
No.
Okay.
That's why the whole thing was like super.
How long was that flight then? That on those smaller?
It was super bizarre because they never
said anything
for it. So it was like,
what
on earth?
Wow.
Yeah. Not crazy. It was just kind of wild. I had not known the reason why that was. So I was like, I'll talk about it this morning. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Somebody was certainly busy in the tower yesterday at Owen Roberts
on like 3 phones.
Airport. Yeah. What else you got for us on a Friday, Sandy?
So, yes, we were going to talk about that, but you're on the money there. That was a bit of a situation yesterday. The RCIPS have finally identified the Sri Lankan chef who unfortunately tragically passed away after falling off of a party boat. And his name is Kasun Tharuka Madhushanka Fernando, 32 years old, from Sri Lanka. He was actually working at the Westin as a chef, so our condolences go out to his family and friends.
It's super sad. My understanding was that when people did see him fall off the boat, and actually there were people that jumped in and they just couldn't find the guy. And my understanding is that he was not a good swimmer.
I mean, the authorities have never said that. They actually said quite the opposite, that people didn't know exactly when he fell off. And it was probably a couple minutes before they noticed him missing. So maybe they jumped in when they noticed him missing.
Could be. I got a story from somebody that knew somebody on the boat. So you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
Telephone.
Right.
Yeah. But what's I mean, our thoughts obviously with the folks over at Weston. We're doing the Corporate Cup tomorrow, and the Weston has a team in the Corporate Cup, and so in my communication yesterday to those guys, they were all obviously mourning.
Yeah.
They all knew this guy, so obviously our condolences to the team over at the Weston for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in other news, a child molester was found guilty of 11 counts against 6 different children.
That was
That case has been going on since 2019.
Wait, from 2018?
2019, he was
2019.
arrested.
It's been that long.
So he'll go to jail, right?
And believe it or not, that's relatively short compared to some other cases.
Oh, that's terrible. Has he been in jail this whole time or out on the streets?
He was on bail, living in the district of East End with his lovely Caymanian wife, hiding out because he's not supposed to have any contact with children, obviously, and definitely not the victims.
How can you still want to be with someone after knowing that?
I know. It's crazy.
So the guy's going to go to prison, right? Obviously.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For how long?
It's very
more or less
disturbing,
than someone got caught with it.
Six children is a lot of children to be molesting. Trust me.
Disgusting. Chop it off.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later on after the premiere leaves us. We're also going to talk about the Expat Association deciding to write CMR.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
They wrote us an email. I was like, "Ooh, how did we get so lucky?"
Oh.
What was in the email?
Basically, they were saying, don't share this with anyone, but we've been reading with interest your coverage of our little association. That's what they called it.
Don't
and
share
the
this
comments
with
from your readership. It's funny.
They sent you an email to a news source and said, "Don't share this with anybody."
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's so crazy.
It's like the government saying we have a big story, but don't announce it yet.
It's like saying, "Hey, JetBlue's going to start flying tomorrow, but don't announce it till tomorrow."
Yeah.
It's clear that they are a little bit they're a little bit of jokers over there at this Expat Association, the team of 2 that probably is running this whole show. But we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Might be 3.
You sure it's 2? Might be 1.
Might be a team of 1. Yeah. Steve has multiple personalities.
I thought there was a Joe. Who was Joe?
Steve's having a good time.
Joe. That's how she signed it. Joanne Joe. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
So your guess is as good as mine.
Is there an E or just an O? J-O?
J-O.
Yeah.
J-O. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like a female to me.
And then we've got penny stock fraudster. You guys might remember this Canadian guy. His name is Andrew McAlpine. Remember when he got arrested during the COVID lockdown? He was going in a charter plane to Canada, and CMR busted that story wide open. That the plane got diverted to Orlando because the authorities had it all planned and they were waiting for him.
Yeah.
And they diverted the plane to Orlando and actually nabbed him in Orlando. It was like everybody in the plane was like, "Whoa, this is like right out of a NCIS kind of movie, show or whatever." So it was kind of crazy. And he actually pled guilty in April to securities fraud. He's awaiting in January his sentencing. He'll probably go to jail for a little bit. And then here in the Cayman Islands, SEMA actually fined the broker that he was working through, the brokerage company that he was working with, over $250,000.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's kind of crazy.
Very
busy news day.
Wow.
Busy.
So yeah, we got lots going on.
Yep.
All right, Sandy, before we let you go, our throwback year today on Old School Fridays.
Yes.
I'm Blake and Aaron, 1982. What do you got? What song?
So big shout out to Sue Parsons. She's picked the selection. I think I'm going to start letting my listeners pick,
All right.
So she said Prince, Little Red Corvette.
Ooh.
Is that from 1982?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Good song.
One of my favorites.
The game is also to see how quickly I can bring it up once you mention it.
Once you
Yeah.
that database of songs.
There you go. All right, Sandy, have a great Friday, great weekend.
so much,
we'll
guys.
catch you on Monday.
Awesome. Have a good one.
See ya.
Yes. Remember that song? That was a good one. Thank you, Sue, for that selection. Little Red Corvette. Man, Prince was incredibly talented. That man had just a plethora of music in his head. He was a prolific writer. He actually wrote a lot of music that he didn't necessarily end up singing or performing himself. He would write for other people. So some of the classics, Diamond Princess, good morning. Yes, it is Friday. Good morning, Marshall, joining us from North Carolina. Irvlyn right here from Newlands. Sandra says, what's the backup YouTube page? Sandra, if you WhatsApp me, I can send you the exact link, but it's actually just called Cayman Mall Road as well. So when you search for it, there should be two, and it's obviously the second one. Larry from New York, good morning. Olivia, good morning. Billie Jean, Michael Jackson, yeah, that was a good one, Larry. Felicia, Alice, Wee Wee, Richard, Nadine, James, Brenda. We're shy of 200 people. Brenda says people are still waiting on the Honduras flight for today. What a mess. We'll talk about that after the premiere. He's short on time, so we'll grab him on. He's really, really busy today. Got lots of meetings. Kevin is going to be joining us afterwards as well. We're going to dispel a couple COVID myths as it relates to CMR, so make sure you guys tune in for that. And listen, all 197 of you who are listening right now, forward the link to your friends. If they haven't tuned in yet this morning, let's get this show on the road. Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning, Sandra.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, and happy Friday to everyone in our wonderful Cayman Islands.
Thank you so much. We got tons of people already tuned in listening. So we know that you have multiple meetings this morning. So let's just jump right into it if you're happy to do that.
Yep, sure.
All right. So yesterday, the news dropped that the new legislation in relation to vaccine mandates is now in full effect. As of yesterday, it was, assented to, it was signed off on, all the formalities, and it is now law. So I know we wanted to kind of break it down a little bit this week because people had questions about different categories of people who would be impacted by this. And now we can actually go through all of those elements of the legislation.
Right.
So folks, someone is drilling in my house, but just FYI, I'm going to share the link here for the story. The legislation's actually in the story. So if you want to read it directly, there's two pieces of legislation here. It's the Customs and Border Control Amendment Act 2021 and the Immigration Transition Amendment Act 2021. So you just click on those links in the story, and then it will actually give you all of the details, like the actual legislation itself. All right.
And then, we had the press release yesterday, which covered a lot of the details, and it announced the coming into effect of those two amendment acts. So that means that the provisions of those amendment acts would have amended the provisions of the underlying acts, which is the Immigration Transition Act and the Customs and Border Control Act. So
right.
It's fully, those provisions are fully in effect, and the press release yesterday, which you would have seen, laid out a lot of the details of who it relates to and who might be impacted by it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's what we're going to take a look at now. We're going to have a look at some of those categories this morning. And of course, if you have a question relating to this for the premiere, please feel free. We do know that there was a press conference yesterday as well. I saw the press conference as a little bit of a primer for what's to come. So just getting people ready to say, you know what, we're edging ever closer to really finalizing reopening, trying to set a date. And one of the key components of that, Premier Panton, was to have this lateral flow test in place.
Right.
So that was really a big announcement yesterday. And of course, you did a demonstration or two of how the test works, so that people could see exactly how easy it is.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I mean, we had the presentation, I think, about 2 days earlier, and it really is very simple. It's designed to be administered by anyone without any specific training at home, and it works really well. The first person that I saw actually do the test themselves was the deputy governor, and of course he came up negative as well, thankfully. And
I know that would have been quite funny if that wasn't the case.
Yeah, there a few people were wondering if they would tempt fate and put a little 10-cent bet on it or something. But anyway, it went really well, and it was a very useful demonstration because it shows that these tests, which are much more reliable than they used to be in the past, and a really great surveillance tool. They're so easy to use. It's easy for anybody. A child could follow the instructions and do it properly. So it really does reflect a significant game changer for us in our ability to do surveillance, ability to understand when somebody might actually be positive, and then at that point might need isolation or quarantine, as opposed to just having them sit around and wait for 14 or 15 days to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So it really opens up the possibilities of substantially reducing the impacts, the inconvenience on the lives of people who may by chance end up being some kind of contact of an individual or individuals who have been found to be positive.
Right. So the idea then is, if someone is a contact and they do this lateral test, will they not be isolating at all? Is that what the plan is?
So once they do the lateral flow test, and this is particularly true where you have people who are already vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
but it can work otherwise as well. If you are able to take the lateral flow test and you demonstrate that you are negative, you can go about your activities.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is at a higher risk, they might be wanting to take that test every day, for example.
Mm.
If there's an indication that they may be positive, then we need them to report that to public health, and they would then go and have a PCR test to confirm whether or not they're positive. So we're only affecting those people then, and we're only requiring those people who are in fact positive to go in to quarantine in order to control the spread. I mean, if the tests are indicating that people are not positive, then there's no reason to keep them in isolation on the chance that they may be. And it's really going to be significant for those families that are have a high level of vaccination in the family, but they have, for example, young children under 12 who can't get vaccinated.
Right. And I was going to say, the fact of the matter is a large number of persons have been put in isolation because of the recent outbreak in the schools, and the vast majority of them are obviously testing negative. So yeah.
Right.
So that would certainly help the situation. All right. Good morning, Aliano. Morning, Richard, joining us from Texas. Dion is here. Dion says, happy Friday. Odette. Emma says, buenos dias, gente de CMR. Que tengas un día bendecido para todos. So in case you don't know what that means, rough translation, good morning, CMR people. I hope that you all have a God bless day, or God bless all of you. All right, so let's get on here. We do have a question that has come in from a WhatsApp listener, and we know the answer to this already, but we'll throw it out there as well. It says, morning, Sandy. Can you ask the Premier why persons who had COVID and have natural immunity and can show it through blood work weren't allowed in this amendment to the immigration and CBC laws? In other words, as an exemption. Is there something that could be, is that something that could be considered as grounds for exemption by the CMO? We know from the medical science that the answer for that is actually no, but perhaps from a political standpoint, you might want to answer why you'd think that was a no, if you do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the advice has always been that there is benefit to having, to having survived or having recovered, let's say, sorry, from COVID, but um, it is very clear that that is not necessarily that kind of immunity is not necessarily the best kind of immunity. And I think in the press, at the start of the press briefing yesterday, I think, and also at a subsequent point, perhaps during the questions, Dr. Lee made it very clear that a vaccine-induced immunity is going to be a lot stronger than immunity, which may some degree of immunity which may develop from having recovered from COVID. So it's better, you know, some kind of immunity is better than nothing. Some kind of immune resilience against COVID is better than nothing. But the vaccine-induced one, particularly with the better vaccines that we have approved in Cayman, those are going to give you a better and stronger, more resilient immune reaction, a better defense against this virus. So that is why the legislation doesn't contemplate that. It's practically speaking, it's difficult to. You don't get a certificate, for example, saying yes, I have natural immunity, and it would be very difficult to operate on the basis of getting evidence and having a test to demonstrate that you have recovered from COVID and you have some kind of natural immunity. As I said, something is better than nothing, but it is the view and the advice we've had is that it is not as good as having one of the approved vaccines.
Yes. And in fact, to that listener to the program, this is why I keep saying to people, definitely check out these segments that Kevin Watler has been hosting, because a lot of these types of questions have actually been answered. And this one, I'm just trying to see exactly where I've just saved it. But this specific question came up as a point of query already. And the research clearly shows that your best protection is actually to have both. So if you get if you get the virus and you're lucky enough to survive it and have no long-term illnesses and so on, then getting vaccinated after that actually gives you the best case protection, the best case scenario. Let me just see where I've saved this. I'll play that video here in a second for the benefit of our other viewers who maybe missed that segment. But folks, listen, go back to the YouTube channel, the CMR Facebook page, go under the link that says CMR COVID series, and you can watch any of those at your leisure. So let's delve in, Premier, to the legislation.
Before you go into that, I want to say thank you and I want to say a big thank you to Kevin Watler for the incredible work that he has been doing. And I know he's been doing that. I'm gonna sort of presage your comments earlier. Subsequently, I know he's been doing that out of the goodness of his heart, because he cares about his country, he cares about Cayman, and he lives and works in a country, in a jurisdiction where this is a very prevalent issue, and he has access to lots of information and lots of experts.
Absolutely,
and it's really fantastic and an immense service to the public of the Cayman Islands that both he and you are performing in arranging these shows and getting all these experts on to be able to really provide the facts, not misinformation, but facts, relevant information to the people of the country on this issue.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing. And we'll delve into this a little bit later on in the program, but we even had people now in other jurisdictions like Jamaican media last night reaching out to CMR to say, hey, oh my gosh, can I get the contact details for that epidemiologist, that expert that you just had on? So it's been amazing. And we're going to talk about some of the details of how, Kevin, utilizing his available resources and contacts, have been able to really put that together. But let us have a look.
Last night was really good. And I think, to the extent that he needs more current data in order to more fully flesh out his modeling. I think I'll talk to public health about whether we can actually just provide that data to him. Because I think it's very useful to have that sort of thing done. We are having it done by what used to be Public Health England, which is now coincidentally called UKHSA, which is a Health Security Authority, I think it is. And they're going to be doing some modeling for us in the coming days. But it's always useful to get, different people doing it, so there's always going to be some differences, and it's useful to be able to compare and see the extent to which, there are different outcomes depending on the slight changes in methodology. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we'll try to arrange that. But that show last night was fantastic. Every one of them have been good, and I look forward to trying to catch any that you have coming on in future. I encourage everybody to do it. It's it is very relevant information. It is not YouTube nonsense that somebody somewhere has pushed to you and said, "Hey, look at this," because they want to push some agenda on you. This is just the information. It's out there. It's clear. It's very useful. It's very informative. So thank you all again.
And thank you for acknowledging the hard work that has definitely gone into it. So let's just have a look, folks. Again, I want you to all be aware of precisely how this legislation impacts you. And we've just got it here. Let me just see if I can enlarge it just a tad, so it's a little bit more visible. So this one is the Immigration Transition Amendment Act 2021, Act number 3 of 2021. So just remember now, folks, that here in the Cayman Islands, we had a substantial change in terminology and actually, more than that. So we no longer refer to our legislation as law in the formal title. It's now an act after the change of name of Parliament, which was that this year or last year?
That was last year.
That was
it
last
was
year.
about, I think, around October last year.
Wow, time flies. So this legislation obviously lays out the various categories of individuals. So the first thing it talks about is the different sections that have been amended or either amended or inserted. So Section 3, for example, talks about the insertion of sections 52A and 52B, which are right here. So don't forget, folks, any legislation that you want to read, thanks to the civil servants and the government, is now available in PDF format. You can download it, you can print it, you can highlight it, you can take your little notes, whatever you need. It's available for free on the gazettes.gov.ky website. So this is important because remember, there was a time when you actually had to go and buy a physical copy at the House of Parliament, which is formerly the Legislative Assembly. There's kind of no way around that. This accessibility to legislation, I think, is amazing. It means that we all have a chance to read legislation and try to understand what it says. Now, I know most people, probably in the 80% zone, don't necessarily need to do that, or they don't necessarily want to do that. They just want to make sure that they understand what pieces of the legislation, or if anything at all, actually impacts them specifically.
Right.
So,
and just to add to that, Sandra,
yes.
If you are looking at a standalone piece of legislation, which is a complete law or complete act, you can just bring that up alone and you can read through that. There may be instances where that happens to refer to definitions that exist perhaps in other laws, and you will need to go to those other laws to confirm that definition. But that's all online, as you say. It's all available, and it's fantastic. The days of having to make sure that you have books of all the legislation, or you have to go down to the LA and buy a copy of legislation and all that. That's all gone now. I mean, this is a new era, and it's great that we have this access. But the point I'm making is that when you have a standalone act, that may be the only thing you have to look at. In cases like this, where you have amendment acts, you need the actual original legislation, and the Amendment Act to compare. So, for example, in Section 3 of the Immigration Transition Amendment Act that you have up, you will see it says
The Principal Act.
Principal Act, meaning the original act is
Yes.
amended by inserting after Section 52 the following section, and it has a heading: mandatory vaccinations for persons specified under Part 6. The laws are generally divided into different parts, sort of like chapters in a book, and then 52A. Whenever you see a capitalized A after the section number like that, that means it's a recent addition to brought about by an amendment to insert a new section 52A,
Yes.
following which is what's set out here, and then it goes into the detail of what it is it's referring to in terms of vaccinations for persons.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Premier. Not like we're trying to encourage everybody to go to law school, but I mean, understanding how this all works, I think, is somewhat useful. You know what I would really love? This is a little bit of a tech request. So the amendment piece of legislation, so this is the Amendment Act, right? As the Premier said, it's just going to speak specific to the amendments. But of course, you'll see stuff here that says subject to subsection 6 and section 52B. So it's kind of like referring to other pieces of legislation. But here's the thing that I would love is, where it says the Principal Act, if that was hyperlinked to the actual Principal Act, that would be great. So that when they create this document, right, whatever that Principal Act is, the immigration law, whatever it's called, I could just click on where it says Principal Act because it's hyperlinked. It would take me to the original source document. Just a suggestion.
Yeah,
it's easy to do.
I think the reason we don't have that, I mean, it's something to be considered. Yeah, I think the reason we don't have that is that these are all PDF documents. They're not
easy to hyperlink a PDF. Trust me.
Is it? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, you know more about these things than I do.
Yes, pass that recommendation along because it just makes people's lives easier. Because now I have to go and separately search for the Principal Act.
I agree. It is one of my pet peeves with different things when you're reading a document online in particular, and let's say with my sustainability agenda and ministry, I am completely in favor of trying to go as paperless as possible. So being able to look at it online and just click on a hyperlink, as you say, to shift into other things, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so let's have a look here. So the first thing is it says subject to subsection 6 and section 52, any person to whom the section specified in subsection 2 apply shall provide the board or the director of works as applicable with a vaccination certificate relating to that person and any dependent of that person when the person applies to be granted the right to be employed or to reside in the Cayman Islands for the renewal of such rights. So in other words, when this is going to impact people is at the renewal stage of a work permit, this bit here, or at the actual application stage. Yes?
Right.
In simple terms.
Yeah. So if it's a new application, it will be relevant. If it is a renewal of an expiring permit, then it will be relevant as well.
All right. So it says subsection B, in the case of any person and any dependent of that person who has been vaccinated with a vaccine course that is not an approved vaccine course, a declaration signed by the person that the person and any dependent of the person will comply with any directions of the medical officer. So what is that bit envisioning? So the list of, just for the benefit of our listeners, a list of approved.
Oops. Hello. I don't know if you're still there, Sandra. It says I'm still in the show, but I can't see or hear you. Let me, I'll leave and come back in, because if you can't get it back, I don't know how to get it back. So just give me a second. I'll leave and come back in.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if that was me that did that or what happened there, but somehow we got kicked out. I'll give the Premier just a second to jump back into the conversation. Not quite sure what happened there. All right, let's just give him one quick second. So again, I was actually saying that there we go. Not sure what happened, what the tech issue there. There we are. All right. So,
Hello? Could you hear me just now?
yeah, I mean, something happened and we somehow got kicked out randomly.
Yeah,
So.
it said that I was still on. It said you could hear me.
It could. I'm wondering if it was me clicking the wrong link. Entirely, entirely possible.
Yeah.
I've always got so many windows open at the same time. But the question that I was asking, and just to make it very, very clear, for the benefit of our listeners, what I was actually saying is that there's 4 vaccines that are approved by the Chief Medical Officer for the purposes of this. They are AstraZeneca, Janssen, which is a Johnson & Johnson vaccine,
Correct.
Moderna, or Pfizer.
The Janssen or Johnson & Johnson, that's the one-shot vaccine.
Yes. So the 4 of those are approved. So just this subsection B, where it says that if someone doesn't have any of those approved vaccine courses, a declaration signed by that person and any dependent will comply with any directions of the medical officer of health. So what sort of directions would he be giving someone who doesn't have one of the approved vaccines?
Well, I think this allows the flexibility. There may be a point in time, for example, that a vaccine is regarded as effective and with a significant degree or an appropriate degree of efficacy, but it hasn't been approved yet. It just gives flexibility that the medical officer can say, yes, that vaccine is acceptable.
Okay.
Provide some degree of discretion, but though it also is designed to presage the rest of the provisions, which in general allow the opportunity for the 40-day grace period, which is contained in the legislation, to allow people to get an approved vaccine as well. It also, allows the exemptions that exist. So, it may be that, well, just in general, I think it's designed to create additional discretion where the medical officer decides it's appropriate to exercise that discretion, whether it's because of potential exemption or whether it's because there is a possibility that the vaccine that has been taken is acceptable but has not yet been approved or authorized locally.
Okay. So leaving for future flexibility. So that's important. Yeah. All right. So for an unvaccinated person, subsection C, it says that a declaration signed by that person and any unvaccinated dependent that they will complete an approved vaccination course and provide a vaccination certificate to the board. So this is interesting, and that the person can still come in, but they have 40 days with which to comply if the work permit is granted or renewed. Or are we expecting them to do that before entry?
Well, people come from many different jurisdictions, and believe me, around the world, there are many countries that are finding it very difficult to get access to vaccine. Mm-hmm. And there's this term that is used, vaccine desperation, which is truly reflective of circumstances where countries have a lot of COVID, but they have a lot of difficulty getting access to vaccines. And to be honest, most of these countries are going to be, the poorer countries who have less leverage, less ability to have been striking deals with vaccine producers in the early days to make sure that their supply was guaranteed. And also it's a lot of them are people that probably need it the most. They're least able to, to deal with the public health protocols and masking and all that, even if they can get access to those things. And they usually live in sort of high density type arrangements, so they need it the most, and those are the ones that tend not to be able to get access as easily. So we want to be able to provide that people who are coming from countries where they cannot, not that they do not want to, but they just cannot get access to the vaccine. We've got to provide a facility here where those people can come in, and they sign the document acknowledging that they're happy to take an approved vaccine on arrival, and within the 40-day window, then they take the vaccine and they fully comply.
Okay, so folks, you got a 40-day grace period, just to make it clear, whether you're coming into the island or you're actually here and subject to a renewal application and you've not yet been vaccinated. You can sign a declaration. Now, I'm assuming that this declaration of intent is a document that the Works Department will prepare and have ready for people to sign.
Yes. There are additional forms that have been prepared, and these will be available on the website. So, for example, typically you don't, when you file an application for a temporary work permit, you don't have anything to do with health on that. In this case, it applies to temporary permits as well, because a temporary permit can be up to 6 months. So we have a new form that will be attached or be a part of the temporary work permit application, which achieves the same objective of getting people to either confirm that they're vaccinated or confirm that they're going or willing to be vaccinated after their arrival.
The one thing that occurred to me about this 40-day grace period is it puts a little bit of a burden on the Works employees, because now they have to follow up, and I don't know what systems they will have in place to make sure nothing falls through the crack. But if someone gets approved subject to this declaration, they need to make sure at day 41 that documentation has been submitted and there's some level of follow-up. So hopefully we don't hear later on that there have been issues with the system of alerts and they haven't properly been alerted that, oh yeah, this person never provided that certification.
Right. Well, that's a process issue, and I'm sure that they will have the necessary checks in there to make sure that the provisions are complied with.
Yes, let's hope so. Run daily reports, folks. Okay, so it says that subsection 1 does not apply to variation of a residency and employment rights certificate. So there are categories of individuals, folks, who are exempted from this legislation, and perhaps it's a good idea to just review who some of those individuals are. So we have spouses. Let me see. So we've got, obviously, Caymanians, this doesn't apply to them, but spouses of Caymanians get what's called an RERC. So that's the Residency and Employment Rights Certificate. So they are exempted. That's one of the categories that's exempted from having to comply with this.
Right. So, I mean, initially when we drafted the legislation, the advice was, to avoid any sort of legitimate claim that there's targeting of certain categories which you can't defend. We drafted it on the basis that it would have a very broad application. But after the feedback we've had from the public, I think we decided that we would limit the application of it to some extent by excluding those people who are married to Caymanians so it doesn't apply to persons applying for the right to work as a spouse of a Caymanian. It doesn't apply to the surviving spouse of a Caymanian or or a permanent residence holder. It doesn't apply to persons applying for variations of existing permanent residence applications, such as change of occupation or adding dependents. And of course, you know that there is a separate consideration going on in relation to non-Caymanian civil servants, which the deputy governor has acknowledged, and he's talked about that. That's something that they would be having a look at. So it doesn't deal with those groups at all. But the press release that was done yesterday, I think, clearly sets out the groups and persons to whom it does apply. And I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's at least a dozen, maybe a little bit more, that it applies to. So I'll just run through those very quickly. And this is the sorry, the dozen is in relation to the Immigration Transition Amendment Act, and the changes that brings about on the Principal Act. So persons who are applying for work permit grants, as we noted, or renewing work permits, and as I said earlier, that includes the temporary work permit applications and renewals of those. Amendments to a work permit to add dependents, applications in respect of the certificate for specialist caregivers. Of course, those are people who are taking care of many of our elderly and already vulnerable people. So we would definitely want them to be protected and vaccinated. Generally, in relation to permanent residence or permanent residence applications, residence certificates for persons of independent means, surviving or former spouses, civil partners, and adult dependents of holders of residency certificates for persons of independent means, or holders of certificates of permanent residence for persons of independent means who are applying for those certificates in their own right. So separate from the original holders of the certificates mentioned. Persons applying for certificates on the basis of direct investment, surviving or former spouses of or civil partners of a certificate of direct investment holder, applying for such a certificate again in their own right. Holders of residency certificates on the basis of substantial business presence. So if they have LCCL approval, then they've got a significant investment in the business, and they have residence certificates on that basis, then it applies there. It also applies to spouses, partners, and dependents of people holding residency certificates for persons of independent means and certificates of direct investment. Lastly, persons exempted from the gainful occupation requirements of non-Caymanians. And basically, that's a provision which allows, for example, Cabinet to waive the need for a work permit in certain specific cases. So it applies to those persons as well. That is the amendment to the Immigration Transition Act, which is brought about by the Immigration Transition Amendment Act of 2021. And the companion piece, which is the Customs and Border Control Amendment Act, which amends the Customs and Border Control Act. Those amendments relate to applications for student visas. They relate to applications for the renewal of student visas. They relate to persons who are arriving under the Global Citizen Concierge Program. And then lastly, it relates to those persons who receive entries entry permits approved by cabinet. So the class of people who are to whom this is applicable are is fairly large,
Mhm.
and it's generally, just about everybody who is subject to immigration controls and the normal immigration requirements of providing information in relation to health, to address public health concerns. But as I mentioned earlier, it specifically doesn't affect those persons generally who are who are um, who are married to Caymanians and who are applying for the right to work, or what's called the RERC, or the surviving spouse of a Caymanian or permanent residence holder who may have passed on. So it has certain carve outs which were done by amendments to those
Mhm.
two bills. At the time, the bills were being considered and debated in Parliament, and I think just in terms of the normal process that we go through in terms of legislation, you have the first reading, which is just a formality. It just describes what the legislation is. The second reading is when you actually have the debates that occur in relation to, and the contributions and comments which occur in relation to the legislation. And then at the end of the second reading, there is a vote. If the vote is in favor of the legislation, in terms of a majority vote, then it moves on to committee stage. If the vote is against it, then it stops. That's it.
Mhm.
And in this case, of course, both both moved on to committee stage, had the full support of the government, and in the committee stage, then is when we deal with any potential amendments, and those amendments can be brought by either side, either the government or the opposition. Um, I don't think in this case any amendments were proposed by the opposition. So the amendments which were made to both of the bills were made by or instigated by the government bench and the mover of the bill, which would have been the Honourable Deputy Premier. So that's how we end up with these carve outs, these exceptions being made in terms of limiting the impact on those who are spouses of Caymanians
Mhm.
or spouses of a permanent resident holder, residence holder.
Okay, can we take a few questions? I know you've got to get going here shortly, but let's just take a few questions. So Charles Whitaker's asking, can the Premier say why the UK government is giving the Cayman Islands the vaccine for free?
Well, I think the UK government has not just given Cayman the vaccines for free. They've provided the vaccines to all of their overseas territories, and I think it's a reflection of their commitment to helping the country and helping its territories deal with what is a global public health concern.
Mm.
I think we should all be extremely grateful to the UK for stepping up and taking this position. Um, we don't represent a huge population group, even added together. So it's something that they can manage, and we should be very grateful for it. We have had the best, what is demonstrated to be the best, the most effective vaccine, which has been given by the UK, which is the Pfizer-BioNTech or BioNTech vaccine, and I think it represents the commitment of our mother country to assisting its territories in a time of real need. I can tell you from talking or being on conversations with, for example, other territories, other states in the Caribbean,
Mhm.
CARICOM member heads of state discussions, for example, there are we have a lot of countries in the Caribbean who are finding it very difficult to access supplies of vaccine, and in some cases, even the vaccines that are regarded as having a lower efficacy, they're not necessarily getting great access to it. So there's a global vaccine commitment organization which is trying to basically distribute vaccine supplies as equitably as possible across the globe. But that is somewhat effective, but it is not entirely. And many of our neighboring countries and states are struggling to find and to get good access, reliable access to vaccine supplies. And here we are getting it provided by the United Kingdom, our mother country, and they have stepped up and they have provided this with us exactly whenever we need it. So I think enough can't be said in terms of saying thank you to the United Kingdom in this respect.
Okay, we have Janelle who's asking if she's going off island with a child that's 5 years old, does she have to quarantine for the 14 days if she's vaccinated?
If she has a child,
a 5-year-old child
who's 5, yes, you are going to your status is going to take the status of the person traveling with you who has the lowest status in terms of how much time they have to quarantine. So it would unfortunately be 14 days. Now, we will have hopefully the option in the not too distant future available to parents to decide if they want to vaccinate their children, and that should be between 5 and 11. The U.S. is considering that on an emergency use basis. After they have approved it, I suspect the UK will consider it. I don't know what the timing is on that, but in general, I think the UK's approach has been that they recognize that children are far more resilient than adults, so they're more likely to take their time with this. So we'll see what happens. And in addition, there's one other point which they have been discussing more recently, which is that they feel that children don't need 2 jabs; they just need 1. So that may be something which is relevant to us as well once we get the green light to proceed with having that option open for our parents to be able to get their children between 5 and 11 vaccinated. So that's to come. But unfortunately for now, in that case, if you've got a child who's unvaccinated, you have to do the 14-day quarantine.
We've got a WhatsApp question we've got a WhatsApp question that has come in about a JetBlue flight that comes in tomorrow, apparently. And this person says that they've noticed that a number of vacationers on social media have indicated that they're on that flight tomorrow. So this flight is coming in from New York?
That's what I understand, yes.
Okay, so does that mean the borders are open?
Well, just to be clear, and I've tried to make this clarity and provide this clarity previously. September 9th was the date on which we moved into phase 3. And phase 3 allowed for anybody to come into Cayman for any reason. So it allowed for tourists to come into Cayman, but it was still subject to the quarantine protective envelope. And it was not in terms of the original phased reopening plan that we had outlined. It would not have been until October 14th, i.e. yesterday, that the quarantine was going to be dropped. So what we did initially was we paused the reopening plan particularly after the outbreak with those students in the Georgetown primary groups that came up as positive, and all that meant was that we were still allowing people to come in as tourists, but they had to comply with the protective quarantine envelope requirement, and we were not going to move ahead then necessarily to go to phase 4 as of October 14th. So yes, even though we're still technically in a pause state, the pause is subsequent to the September 9th change or rollover into phase 3, which allows tourists to come in. So if tourists are willing to do the quarantine requirements, then they're absolutely welcome to come, and that's what we see reflected on some of these flights, initial flights that are coming in.
Then someone mentioned that tourists are required to be vaccinated under phase 3.
Yes, all tourists are required to be fully vaccinated.
Okay.
No tourists, no unvaccinated tourists are allowed in.
All right, we've got a question from Denny Warren Jr. Denny says, morning, the EU digital COVID certificate recognizes natural immunity. Will a person with such a certificate, because that person only recovered from COVID-19, but was not subsequently vaccinated, be disallowed from traveling to the Cayman Islands?
I am not familiar with the specifics of the EU digital COVID certificate, but I do think that whatever that recognizes, if it doesn't comply with the specifics of our law, which requires vaccination, it probably will not be included. But as I said, there is some degree of discretion.
And we're not part of the EU, so I'm just having a quick online search of this. So it says that the EU digital COVID certificate entered into application July the 1st, 2021. It's for EU citizens and residents, and it's basically trying to allow free travel and movement within the UK. And it shows proof, that a person has been vaccinated against COVID-19, has either been vaccinated against COVID-19, received a negative test, or recovered from COVID-19. So I'm not sure why that would apply to us if we're not in the EU.
Well, again, that, as I said, that is the legislation doesn't say you can provide, we'll accept the EU digital COVID certificate. Legislation says we need evidence that you have been vaccinated with one of our approved vaccines. And yes, there is a degree of discretion and degree of flexibility, but I don't think that it's necessarily going to relate to accepting a certificate which, on the basis that there was some degree of natural immunity. As I said, the advice that we've had, the advice from Dr. Lee has been clear that the immune response to vaccination is going to be better than the immune response of in terms of people who have recovered from COVID-19.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but this is, we go by the advice we get from the experts.
Right. So Denny, hopefully that's useful. Again, things like an EU digital certificate, if you go to the website here, this applies to just member states and they're listed there. Obviously, the Cayman Islands would not be listed. And in fact, the UK would also not be listed either. So check that out, folks, if you're interested in specifics about that. I guess if you're traveling to the EU, then you definitely may want to look into that certificate. Paul from Bermuda joining us this morning. Morning, Paul. How are you? So Sue wants to know if fully vaccinated residents that come into Cayman, do they have to quarantine or just do the lateral tests?
For the time being, they will have to do the 7-day quarantine for vaccinated people. But obviously, once we move to what the industry would regard as truly open, which is the dropping of the quarantine, there won't be any need to do any quarantining. But it would be, and it may well be that one of the recommendations that we have, and again, as I mentioned yesterday, I have a meeting at 9 this morning with the program board, who are going to be providing us with advice on full implementation of the lateral flow testing. It may be that includes a recommendation that there's lateral flow testing to some extent on a perhaps a regular basis for those who have traveled and have re-entered the islands.
All right. Miss Charlene, good morning. She says, I hope all Steve and Karen's, et cetera, are all trolling, utilizing attentive listening skills. I hear this, Charlene. We'll be talking about Steve and Joe and Karen and everybody else a bit later on. Nona says, Honorable Premier Panton, will everyone, including those under 60, whose vaccination efficacy has waned, therefore making them at risk for breakthrough infections, be able to get booster shots before the reopening? So this is a question about booster shots.
Yeah, booster shots are absolutely available right now. In the press briefing yesterday, what I was trying to convey was, yes, we are allowing booster shots for those who are over 60. But at the moment, the vaccine clinics have been indicating that they're trying to initially focus on those who are over 70 and those who have vulnerabilities. But that is, I'm sure, just as we did the phased, the age group phasing in the initial rollout of the vaccines, that seems to be the approach that public health is taking for boosters. But in very short order, I'm sure that we'll be able to shift that, and anybody over 60 who's looking to get a booster can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So they are available. I don't know if they're really saying, if you turn up and you say I'm 60, but I'm not vulnerable, can I have a booster anyway? If there's not a big crowd, they'll probably give it to you anyway.
Mm-hmm. All right. Someone was asking whether there's any consideration of vaccinating people now that this legislation is in place as they arrive at the airport. Like, could we set up a station there so that when people come in, if they've not yet had an opportunity to get vaccinated, that they could say, yes, I want to do it. I do have my approved work permit in hand. Can I go ahead and get my first shot now? Is that possible?
Well, ideally, I'd like to be able to see something like that. But of course, if the airport is in full operation and there's lots of people coming and going, that may limit the ability to do that. But ideally, we would like to be able to people to get their vaccines as quickly as possible. So when there's no longer a quarantine requirement, then I'm sure there's going to be an arrangement where they can go and get that either the same day or the next day.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Sanjita, good morning. Sanjita wants to know, will vaccinated visitors be able to come without a QR code?
Right. So if you're a vaccinated visitor and you do not have a QR code currently, that is not possible without doing a longer quarantine period. But when we move to reopening, then lifting the quarantine requirements, we may actually shift to having a different system where we have the ability to provide a QR code. At the same time, we may have the ability through a separate portal that you can upload your documentation to that portal and get prior confirmation that we have verified your vaccinated status or your vaccine status, and give you approval to then enter.
Right.
So that portal is being finalized right now, and we believe that will then put us in a position where we can have both options available. People can come in and just utilize their QR code, or they can, prior to arrival, get approval through uploading your documents to the portal.
Right. I think there was some confusion about that recently because of a recent news article. Darlene said British overseas is why Charles came out as so blessed and should be grateful. And to Darlene's point and to the Premier's point, there are a lot of people who, a lot of countries and jurisdictions who wish that they had much easier access to the vaccines for sure. I think we answered Nona's question already.
I think Nona may have added a bit to that.
Let me see.
Saying that
Dr. Edwin
I don't remember the original question referring to.
So yeah, the last part I think is more of a comment about the importance of the booster.
Yes, that is fully understood, and that is, that's why we're pushing ahead with that.
So Sue is just clarifying for those persons who are coming in on JetBlue, what is their quarantine requirement when they arrive today?
If they are all vaccinated visitors, or even vaccinated Caymanians, you're going to have to do the 7-day quarantine.
All right, Sanjita, that question has been answered already, but I want you to stay tuned, Sanjita, for the medical reason why COVID antibodies or natural immunity just isn't enough. We do have a video to play from one of our experts that actually came on the program. Jonathan, thank you so much. He says that he doesn't think he's going to be taking the booster. If anything, I'll be taking the ivermectin pills like Joe Rogan. Good luck on that, Jonathan.
Yeah. I would
wish you all the best.
I would take the booster if you qualify.
So Sarah says, what about the visiting doctors that were vaccinated early in the pandemic? Does it make them unverifiable? They still need to quarantine. Why can this be looked at? Or maybe when? So visiting physicians, we do have a lot of them that come in. Like I'm waiting right now on I forget what his official title is, but in the dental profession, and they, one of their big issues why they haven't come in so easily is because they literally come and they book clients for 3 or 4 days. So for them to quarantine for double or triple that time makes no sense. So what will be the position with those if they're vaccinated?
Well, for the time being, that we don't have any plan to make any changes in respect to that. We don't have any plan to grant any exemptions in respect to that. But if we are relatively soon going to be moving to dropping the quarantine requirement, then this issue will go away for them. I mean, the exceptions that we have made to the quarantine requirements have been very, very narrow, and they have been very much limited to circumstances where there was some essential work that had to be carried out. For example, just as an example, the folks that came in to certify the aerodrome, the airport's navigation equipment, to check and verify that that's working properly and to certify that those are working properly. Those folks were allowed to come in under an exemption, but it was a very narrow scope. They had to be sort of escorted. They had to be away from anybody else. It's a narrow period of time. They can't mix with others. So it's very tightly controlled. That is entirely different from what is being discussed in relation to doctors who come down as specialists for very short periods of time. Now, I'm sympathetic to that situation. I'm sympathetic to situations where people have been used to working with and getting services, and they've built relationships with doctors who come in as specialists and provide services in a short period of time, which would preclude their ability to do regular quarantine. I'm very sympathetic towards that, but it is a step too far and it really is too much of a risk for us to grant exemptions for those people to interact with clients and provide services. I mean, doctors, they provide services up close and personal, and it's too much of a risk to just grant exemptions in relation to that. So unfortunately, I think that will continue to be the case until we lift the quarantine requirements.
And the interesting thing about that, of course, is as more and more jurisdictions, like states in the United States of America, for example, I mean, some of our physicians come from elsewhere, but as they continue to mandate that frontline workers and medical professionals get vaccinated, at least to practice in their states, it might be a little bit easier for those persons to then ensure that they are properly vaccinated when it comes to, anyone who's a surgeon or visiting specialist.
I imagine that most of them are going to be vaccinated, and so when the time comes, they'll be able to come in. But most of them come in on temporary permits anyway, so they're technically not coming as visitors.
Right. Good point. Yes. We have a listener in WhatsApp says, for clarity, if the spouse of a Caymanian would like to bring their unvaccinated 16-year-old child to Cayman to visit from Jamaica, will they be allowed or not, or will they have to quarantine upon arrival? So this is the spouse of a Caymanian's child,
right?
16 years old, or I guess even an adult child.
Child of the spouse of a Caymanian.
Sorry?
The unvaccinated child of the spouse of a Caymanian.
Yes. So in other words, Jamaican spouse, or UK spouse, or whatever.
Will they be able to come in without quarantine? Is that
without quarantine or without vaccination?
They can come in without vaccination, but they would have to do the 14 days quarantine.
Okay. All right. And I think kind of a related point. So your just FYI listeners, your vaccination, your booster questions, I'm actually going to send over to the HSA for clarification, because I think they're still enforcing 60 and over, but we'll ask if there's any wiggle room there, Carol. So hopefully that will be useful to you. So Zelda has a question about unvaccinated adult children of Caymanians who are not officially Caymanian. What do you mean they're not officially Caymanian? Yet told that they cannot enter the Cayman Islands to visit their elderly Caymanian parents. Well, you can enter, but you have to meet the requirements to enter. She says, wasn't there a constitutional right to family case precedent in the Grand Court, which would allow adult children to enter Cayman and be with their parents? I'm not really sure that I'm understanding. That doesn't sound like it's a COVID.
We're not officially Caymanian yet, so they cannot enter the Cayman to visit. I'm not aware of anybody that has a connection who are being told that they can't come to visit family members. As far as I'm aware, you can come to visit family members, but you need to comply with the quarantine period, which is appropriate to your vaccination status.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ms. Janet is asking if a person only has one dose and the country that they're coming from has run out. And that has been a situation that I've heard about even in Jamaica. Like someone called me, I think it was last week, saying that one person has received one dose of AstraZeneca and they're told that they can't get the next dose until December, but they'd like to be able to come before then. I guess if they sign that declaration, Ms. Janet, saying that they'll get the second dose within the 40 days, then they can certainly come.
If the first dose is from an approved vaccine.
Right. Now, do we know what's going on with the AstraZeneca on island? Because I've heard just yesterday that they've ran out.
Just in relation to the comment that I see from Marion.
All right.
I just want to clarify in relation to that. There wasn't any confusion. And I see she's saying that I'm saying now that I'm not really sure if it's 60 or 70. No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that it is 60 and over.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the details on the vaccine clinic schedule from the HSA, they are saying that they're taking a phased. They seem to be saying that they're taking a phased approach, so that they're doing 70 and over for right now. and anybody who can demonstrate that they have vulnerabilities. So anybody who says I have a vulnerability, and I suspect that means anybody who's even younger than 60. But just to be clear, and I did say 70, I did say 60 plus yesterday, and then I said for the time being or currently they're doing 70 plus those who are vulnerable. That was and the minister did say that she was sort of correcting me and saying that it was actually 60 plus and not 70 plus. But I think she misunderstood what I had said.
Right.
It has always been that it's 70, that it's 60, age 60 and older are entitled to get the boosters. But for the time being, and in accordance with the vaccine clinic schedule, they're saying they're doing 70 years old plus any of those people who have can demonstrate that they have vulnerabilities. Now, I hope that is clear now.
Yes. Let me just clarify it even further.
I'm not saying
direct from
70.
Direct from the CEO at the HSA, Ms. Lizette Yearwood. Thank you so much, Ms. Lizette. She has confirmed over 60 plus clinically vulnerable plus healthcare workers. So even if you're a 35-year-old healthcare worker, you can get the booster.
Right. Okay.
So over 60 clinically vulnerable and healthcare workers. So if you fall into the clinically vulnerable category, even if you're 50 or 25 or whatever, then you can get it. Clear. Crystal clear.
For
I've had a viewer that said that I think they forgot to type in how old, but they said I'm something years old and I got my booster shot on Tuesday at Lion Center. No confusion there. Really, really easy. Aliano says he's still confused that if one is fully vaccinated and negative upon arrival into the Cayman Islands, why quarantine for 7 days? And do we not see why we have so much kickback against the process? Well, that's where the next phase of the reopening is coming at some point.
Right.
So, Aliano, stay tuned.
So for right now, we have opted to maintain the protective quarantine envelope, irrespective of your vaccine status. And depending on what your vaccine status is determines what length of time you do the quarantine for. So if you're fully vaccinated, as he noted, you're going to do 7 days.
Right. Sanjita says,
you do 10 or
will
14.
visitors be getting the lateral flow test at the airport upon arrival? So how will the lateral flow test, do we know yet in terms of how it's going to be made available to people? And is the government providing these for free, or how is this going to work exactly?
Government will not be providing them for free across the board. There will be circumstances in which they are provided, but for applications within the general populace, outside of schools, outside of government operations, outside of the broader public service, it will likely be businesses and employers that are acquiring these lateral flow tests and utilizing it in accordance with the published standards and requirements for carrying out the test and reporting the test. But of course, it's designed for individuals to be able to do it as well. So if I'm a private individual, I can go and buy lateral flow tests. And what we're trying to do is try to make sure that the costs on these things are as low as possible. I've had lots of conversations with different proposed suppliers to try to encourage them to make sure that they keep the costs down as far as possible. But private individuals will be able to go and buy them, will be able to utilize them, and there will be reporting requirements that they have to comply with.
Elaine is wondering if you think that American Airlines or United will change their position in flights to Grand Cayman if we reopen in November. She's saying that it doesn't really give them enough time to market and sell tickets.
It's difficult to say. At whatever time we announce the quarantine provisions will drop, it's difficult to say whether the airlines will respond to that in a way in an earlier sort of time frame than they perhaps are indicating right now. But if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that Cayman is a very in-demand jurisdiction, and they will respond to market demand as quickly as possible. So, for example, we have had discussions with American, and they've indicated to the Minister Bryan, the Minister of Tourism, that they would be looking at a 60-day window. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that 60-day window gets shortened considerably. Once we actually step up and say, this is the day that we are dropping the quarantine requirement, and from their perspective, then that means we're open.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ms. Nona says she's under 50. So remember, you can be under 50 if you fall into any of those other categories. Zelda's giving more details about the situation that she's referring to. Maybe Zelda sent all the details specifically on WhatsApp so that, the Premier and others can look into that to see exactly what's going on. I often find, just in my experiences, when people tell you these stories, there's always a little bit of missing element to what's really going on there. But
and I'll be honest, sometimes mistakes may be made. Let's face it, everybody, we're all human beings, and we can make mistakes. There can be misunderstandings, but generally, as far as I'm aware, if you have a connection to people in Cayman, if you are related to someone here, you ought to be able to come in and comply with whatever quarantine requirement it is that's relevant to your vaccination status, and to be able to visit those people.
All right, Premier, thank
you're
you
not
so
coming
much.
in as a tourist, then, you see.
Yes.
You are coming in because you have a connection, and that goes back to what it was originally. People were allowed to come in if they had connections, if they had vacation homes here, if they were the mothers or fathers of people who were resident working on the island, they were allowed to come in to visit. So that shouldn't have changed.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully, Ms. Zelda, that's helpful. Bristol Powell says, yes, so we're on a backup YouTube feed at the moment because the primary one, YouTube's a little bit confused. They actually blocked one of our COVID series because they think it's misinformation when it actually isn't. It happened before. We appealed it and they reversed it. But of course, I guess like any other online platform, they make errors occasionally. So we've got 2 YouTube pages just for that same reason. And I do see 21 people on the backup page right now. So I would say subscribe to both and save both just in case this happens. This is the second time in the past month that it's happened. I know I told you guys this a few weeks ago. YouTube is trying to work really hard to target the misinformation segments, but they seem to be missing a few of those and targeting the wrong ones. So there you have it. Artificial intelligence. It's not perfect. It is what it is. Alicia, stay tuned next week for that question to be answered in terms of the reopening. And Jonathan is making some weather predictions. Weatherman Jonathan, you'll be okay. So far, we've been most fortunate. We're already into the month of halfway through October. No major storms to speak of. Sanjita, I think the question to that has already been answered. So the short answer is no. If there'll be lateral tests be used at the
short
airport
answer right now is I don't have an answer specifically on that, but we may do that. This is a lateral flow test. We may do that, but at this point in time, it's
not in place.
Not the plan, but I can't say that that won't change. We've got to continue to be reactive to changing circumstances, and have flexibility. So I am going to have to leave. I've got a 9 a.m. meeting to go to. I've got to go to work. So
thank you very much,
Sandra, very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Nona, for that comment, and others who've said I agree that CMR and Kevin should be recognized by the government. We actually don't need any recognition. Kevin, hop on. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Premier, thank you so much for coming on the program, answering questions. Any final words for our viewers? Hero Blair says, brilliant, Premier. So proud of you. God bless the Cayman Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Blair, and let me say thanks again to you, Sandra, and thank you to Kevin. I can't say enough. I'm so proud of him as such a talented Caymanian and able to pull together all that excellent stuff to provide information. There he is, Kevin. Thank you so
Yes, the
much.
man of the hour.
Hi, Premier Panton. How's everything? I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I'm about to run off, but I just wanted to say thank you very much again. You have been such a stellar role model and somebody who has done an amazing job to go out of your way, out of your own general interest, your own motivation, to inform and to bring the right information to the people of the country. So thank you so much for all the efforts that you put into that. And I hope you have a great day in Hillsborough, I think it is.
Lakeland,
I'm
Florida.
not sure whether you live in.
Yeah, right in the Tampa Bay area. I live in Lakeland, but I serve Hillsborough County for the state. So, but yeah, it's been busy. But I love my people back home, and I have to definitely do my part because I have that public servant heart, and I have to do my part. And I couldn't just sit here and know that I could contribute and not contribute. So I'm just doing this out of the goodness of my heart.
You've done an amazing job. So thank you very much. And I want to wish you all a wonderful rest of Friday and a great weekend. So take care, everybody. Take care to everybody in our wonderful Cayman Islands. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks. We appreciate it. Have a good one. All right, folks. Again, big shout out to Premier Panton. Richard says, what a great show. Big respect to the Premier. Such smart Caymanians. I can't wait to get back home. Kevin, good morning. How are you? Happy Friday.
Good morning. Running off of 3 hours of sleep. Got my coffee.
Oh my gosh. Whoa, you got to get your rest. Try to catch up this weekend.
Oh yeah, this weekend I got some R&R planned.
Okay,
except the stuff I got to do for my mom. I know she's watching. She's been for the last 3 weeks saying, Kevin, I need you to get some stuff to send down for me. But I said, but I have all these shows coming up and I have to do a lot of background work. So my mom's about to kill me.
Oh, you need to take a run out to Walmart or what?
Yeah, she wanted me to get some stuff. Because it's going to be really busy as Christmas approaches, and she likes to get a lot of her stuff done. And customs sometimes gets backed up, so she's trying to get a lot of things out the way before that. Smart. And so it's just trying to find the time to be able to get to the stores, because not everything you can get online. She's been doing a lot of shipments to me. However, just the little stuff that you just have to go to the physical store for. Those are the items she's been nagging me to try to get to.
And she says, yes, Kevin, early shopping. Mama Janet is in the house. All right, Kevin. So listen, I wanted to address a few things. Part of me feels like I shouldn't even give these people the time of day and addressing their nonsense. But then the other part of me recognizes that there are actually people out there who might believe some of what they read. And it was a combination of things. This post that someone sent me, which I'm going to pull up here on the screen, which is just ridiculous. But, I posted it on social media. And so I do want to talk about it this morning as well. So for reference point, let me pull this up. I've talked about this before. I'm going to make some opening remarks. And then, of course, I want Kevin to jump in, what he thinks about the situation here. But we had so a lot of these, they're calling themselves pro-vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, whatever they want to call themselves. They have these private groups that they're constantly kind of hiding out in, right? So I guess it's by invitation only. So they only want like-minded individuals in those groups who are going to agree with them. And, they don't care about anything else sort of thing. So here's what they have put up in the group yesterday. So we have one person, and I got to be honest with you, I have no idea who this McLaren, what's the name? McLaughlin person is. McLaughlin. I heard it's somebody from East End. My East End people said, whoever it is, the person doesn't have much sense. I have no clue who they are, to be honest. I don't actually know. And they put up something. It looks like they're claiming that they've sent us something, which I haven't seen, so I don't know where they sent it. But they're into name calling, so they're calling me grouper face, and I'm like, oh my God, that's gonna hurt my feelings. And then Isadora replies to another person, and she says, well, she may well remove your post as it does not line up with the narrative for which she gets paid, though. And so I want to address that, and I want to be very, very clear with my comments to Isadora. You know, there are people that I have no expectations of. So when it comes to Katinas of the world, Mario Rankins of the world, those people I have no expectations of. Their history speaks volumes for who they are and the caliber of individuals that they are. And I've spoken to that before, so I don't feel like I necessarily have to rehash it. But when you have people who've lived their entire lives getting government kickbacks, living off of the hard work and backs of other people, basically scamming and using the system, I don't have any expectations of those people. They do whatever. And I guess life eventually catches up in terms of consequences, right? But when I thought about Isadora, I must be very, very honest with you that I was very, very disappointed. Number one, in her comment, because it's completely untrue. And number two, that she would be in a group where people are sitting there calling other people names. And this is the same person who I understand was recently on Radio Cayman saying, oh, you know, we should all respect each other and we should be nice. And, you know, she's putting this halo narrative out there like, oh, you know, we can have differing opinions, but we don't have to get down and dirty. And they're in groups. I've seen other messages where they are definitely getting down and dirty. And those comments are being allowed to take place. And very few people are speaking up and saying, why are you having this level of a discourse? If your information is so solid and you've got all these facts about this, that, and the next thing, why is it directed at me? And I wanted to address this from two perspectives. Number one, I'm very, very disappointed in Isadora. This is someone who's been in my home and that I considered as a friend. Now, most of you know, and some of you have known me for 10, 15 years as an acquaintance, whatever, and you've never stepped foot in my house. I'm not trying to put shade on you, but you know that I keep the circle of people that I even allow to walk through my front door to a minimal number of people for good reason, right? Even before CMR, I just keep it tight and just keep it moving. She's someone who, because of the pandemic, has fallen in hard times because of her profession, work in the music industry. And I'm just saying this for full disclosure so that you know exactly where I'm coming from and why, in part, I feel the way that I do about her comments, is, you know, during the pandemic, obviously, she's been hit very hard, like a lot of people working in tourism. That's why we got to get our borders reopened. And during the election, I was super busy. My husband works full time. We're very busy people. And we have a daughter who Izzy was the music teacher. And Izzy came to my daughter's first birthday party at my house. So let me just put it all in context, right? My daughter loves Izzy. And I believe that Izzy cares a lot about my daughter as well. I said, Izzy, I know that you're, tight times. I can't give you a full-time job. But, I need a couple hours a week, maybe 10 hours a week, whatever, someone to pick up my daughter after school, take her home, make sure she gets her snack, just hang out with her until I can actually get home. Because sometimes I have late meetings. I'm covering, these political things in the evenings, whatever, just an extra pair of hands to kind of help us out around the place. She agreed to that. No problem. Let's set a salary. Let's get it done. And I was paying her without fail, whatever. So when someone is in that situation, and here's the point that I want to make about this. This is why I'm mentioning it. At no point did she ever say to me, oh, wow, Sandy, who's paying you? Where are you getting your money from? What's your source of funds? But now, because of this crazier than whatever narrative about the vaccine, here is someone who apparently is concerned about how I'm getting paid. And this is a lie that, oh, she's getting paid to push this narrative, right? Wow, I can't express how disappointed I am in you, Isadora. Like, this really breaks my heart as someone who thought that you were my friend, but I'll get over it. But what I want to say is the point isn't lost on me that you didn't care when I was paying you where the source of funds were coming from. But I want to make this very clear. And I want to make this very clear to every single person who watches CMR and is now concerned about our source of funds and where money comes from. CMR started and for years was maintained out of my own pocket and my own budget. We had no advertising. And in fact, we were not even looking for advertisers. I have said this countless times. CMR is my passion, not a paycheck. And it still remains a passion, not a paycheck. There are certain individuals, and I'm going to call him by name, like Mario, who has put this narrative out there that, oh, I'm being paid by the PAC government. Oh, I'm being paid by this one and that one. The reason why he puts that narrative out there is because that is his MO. So he's the type of person, His history proves it. And if he really wants me to go there, I can pull my receipts. His history proves that he only did stuff if he was getting paid to do it. Even this whole anti-vaxxer, pro-choice situation, I'm convinced that his pockets are getting lined. So y'all, when you want to talk about who's getting paid to do what, you need to look a little bit closer at the facts. So he now has this, that's how he's lived his entire life. If someone is giving me political kickbacks, I'm going to support them. If someone is paying me, I'm going to support them, that sort of thing. That's his MO. So he wants to project his own MO on other people. That's what this is all about. He said it on his show about me. And if he continues with it, I'm telling him his ass is going to end up in a court of law with a lawsuit, right? Then other people who can't think for themselves, it's so funny how they're like, oh, well, I want to be a free thinker. No, Isadora, you don't think for yourself. You're more of a sheeple than the people who are looking at factual information when it comes to the vaccination. So you're going to now repeat this narrative that Mario has put out there about, I'm getting paid to do this. Nobody, and I want you to listen to me very carefully, and I'm going to bring Kevin back into the conversation. Nobody can pay me for my loyalty. Isadora, listen to what I'm about to tell you. Loyalty doesn't come with a price. My opinion doesn't come with a price. Okay? My support of vaccines and putting out correct and accurate information has no price tag. You cannot buy those things from me or by extension from CMR. What you can potentially buy is a display ad. You can buy a show appearance on the show. You can buy an interview, potentially. Those are assets. You can go on the website, click on the media package. Those are the things, the tangible things that someone can purchase and buy. You don't get to buy me. I'm not for sale. My opinion isn't for sale, and my position isn't for sale. So all of you who sit here talking your cockamamie, backseat driving foolishness. Oh yeah, well, Sandy's the government. Listen to me. If PAC had me in their back pocket, like you claim that they do, half of the things that I address on this show would never be addressed. And I have said this before, I'm a PAC supporter, and being a supporter does not mean that I'm blind to any of their shortcomings. It doesn't mean that I don't see when issues need to be addressed and things need to be fixed. And I recognize that this government is so far trying to fix a whole lot of stuff that the previous government who was in there for 8 years wouldn't even touch. So I'm willing to give them a chance. And I want all of you to understand me loud and clear in terms of what I'm saying. Kevin Wattler has spent countless hours of his time, not a mention of compensation from me or anybody else. Although, to be honest, as a good thinking person, I feel like I need to compensate Kevin. Time is money in the real world. I'm a business owner. I get that, right? I know he's passionate about helping the people of the Cayman Islands, and he's doing it from his heart. But Kevin's time, he could be doing something else. You know what I'm saying? So I just really wanted to clarify this point as much as possible. I'm not about trying to give the McLaughlins, whoever the hell that is, any real platform, because even within their own group, look at the dissent. Look at how discombobulated they are. I don't even know if that's a real word right now, but they've changed the name of the group to COVID discussion, from COVID discussion to COVID information. This person says, we have to be more inclusive and refrain from posting opinions. Many here are vaccinated, and some of the opinions posted are very hard for them to read, etc. For example, all vaccinated will soon die. This is the foolishness that's going on within these groups, folks, and there's more than one of them. So this person says, let's stick to sharing information. Anyone can create a side group for discussion, especially if they don't feel safe sharing their opinions here. Another person says, so the suggestion for a large group like this was to share information and form smaller groups of trusted people for more personal opinions. Then this McLaughlin person, apparently he or she, whoever that is now upset saying, ooh, I'm out if we can't share our opinion. Wow. They're acting like a bunch of spoiled children, folks, on the playground, and it's just stupid and it's just ridiculous. Over here in our little corner here in CMR, that's why I didn't even really want to bring Kevin into that part of the conversation when I had to set Izzy straight. It is what it is. Even as your friend, I am going to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. And anyone who's ever been my friend will know that. That's the level of honesty that I try to bring to a relationship. So when I say to Izzy, oh, wow, you got fired because you refused to get vaccinated. You refused to do weekly testing as the company had instructed. You refused to wear masks. You refused to wear a visor. All these things your employers put in place, and you refused every single thing. You had an excuse for every single thing. And then you wonder why you got fired. I'm like, you've been an employer yourself. And if it was some other issue and you had an employee refuse all these things that you put in place, you would have fired them too. I can't have sympathy for people who want to operate by their own rules when we live in a society that is governed by societal rules. We have to do things every single day to protect one another. Whether I'm driving on the road, when I'm in the confine of my own personal home, I have a lot more freedoms. When I go out of my yard, even in my own yard, you can't come in my yard and do what you want to do. There are rules that govern our relationship and dictate as a society how we operate. And if you don't want to play by the rules, then you need to go find yourself some little hole in the corner back in Zimbabwe or wherever, where there are no rules and you can do whatever the hell you want. But every country that I'm aware of that has something that they care about, they're trying to protect, normally has rules. Kevin. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff says, good morning. I'd like to say a big thank you to Sandy, Kevin, CMR, and all the professionals and the great work. And let me just say, Charlene says, hot, boom. It was just a mic drop moment. But I want to focus here on what's important. What's important is that Kevin has been working tirelessly to reach out to both local and overseas expertise. You tell me. Now, y'all be straight with me now, right? CMR is a team of like 2.5, okay? Kevin has been able to secure multiple epidemiologists, frontline workers, virologists, physicians that are like top in class from all over, particularly in Florida, but really from all over. And he has done that because of his connections in Florida and because of the profession that he's in. I mean, he has a wealth of resources available to him. His hard work, reaching out to people, booking them to come and talk to the people of the Cayman Islands. Who else has been able to do that? Nobody. You all need to take your hat off to Kevin in a real serious way. Our own government hasn't done it. And of course, government has countless resources. The Compass, not picking on the Compass, but they still got 45, 55 people that work for them. They haven't done it. Kevin approached me and he stepped up to the plate on this project in a way that has far exceeded anything that I could have imagined. And Kevin, I want to sincerely say to you this morning, I know the Premier has thanked you multiple times. The people are appreciating what you're doing. But from me to you, I mean, I am just so floored by what you've been able to accomplish and what you've been able to do. And I just want to say thank you a million times.
No problem. And I just want to make it very clear that, this is just coming straight from the heart. When things are really, really, really busy for me here, when we were really booming with cases here, unfortunately, I've witnessed friends, people that I knew that passed away because of COVID. And I knew what COVID could do to a nation. I know Cayman was always in a bubble, and I wasn't actually very worried about Cayman for a little bit because Cayman, whether it was the progressives and now PAC, they were doing everything right. I was watching the press conference because even though I still pay attention, I like to know what's going on because most of my family is still in the Cayman Islands, and so I was paying attention and kind of just watching one of the press conferences, and that's when they started talking a bit about reopening, and I'm like, wait a minute, that bubble's about to pop. And so when that bubble goes away, I know some of the things that we got some first-class medical systems. We have some very great some really expertise here. We got a lot of resources here. Cayman does not have that. And I know that some of the things that we were planning for, it ended up being in a very, very tricky situation. And I'm like, well, I really hope Cayman doesn't make some of those same mistakes. And so I started to ask a lot of questions. And this is about 3 months ago or so. I started to ask different people different questions. And some of the answers came back. I'm like, okay, good. Other answers that came back, I didn't like it. Or I just didn't get an answer on some of the things. And so I'm like, you know what? I am not exactly comfortable with certain things, and I want to make sure that people are really armed with information there. We do know that there are people like Dr. Lee who, I mean, he is very, very smart, but he is one opinion out of a lot of other opinions that are out there. And he's done a great job at leading the effort. Of course, there's a team that they all work with there as well too with HSA that also have a lot of great individuals that are also looking at what's going on in the rest of the world and making some good recommendations for the leadership of the country. But at the same time, you got to be realistic about certain things, that even though they are very smart people, even though they are speaking to people that they have connections with, you also got to understand that they have not actually been firsthand dealing with the massive amount of cases like the rest of the world, because Cayman's had the benefit of being in that bubble. And so I wanted to make sure that, you know, some other sides, some people that's been on the front lines actually get to share their stories. So people who are going to be on the front line in Cayman, once people start coming into the Cayman Islands, they actually hear from people that's been on the front lines. Because the amount of cases that the Cayman Islands really had over the last 18, 19 months, it's really such a small sample of what could have actually happened. And it's so great that we have a high vaccination rate, but if you watched the show last night, you would know that it's definitely a more that needs to happen. And we're not in a safe place to just completely say, okay, it's time to get back to life before the pandemic. There are still things that we need to work on. There's going to be some medical infrastructure that still needs to be supported. There's going to be some planning within businesses and people's homes that need to happen, as well as we need more people to be vaccinated. And with seeing so much mis and disinformation that's circulating out there, I was seeing a lot more nonsense circulating than facts. And so I was like, okay, no, we really need to counter this. And so again, I started reaching out to a lot of different people, trying to see if we could try to do some what we call risk communication, and try to lower some of that disinformation out there by putting facts out there. And so I was like, well, one of the largest platforms in Cayman is definitely CMR. Whether you like CMR or not, everyone really watches CMR. A very large percentage of the people watch CMR. And so I said, hey, Sandra, I want to help you out, try to get some, because I know she's definitely in support of promoting the vaccine, promoting public health. And sometimes if she said something that I was like, "Ooh, you got that one wrong," I would literally message her, "Hey, Sandra, that one you might need to rephrase that a bit. This is actually the situation." Because, you know, one of the things I learned about COVID is, and everyone should know, that there's a lot of unknowns about this virus. I happen to be one of the people that actually has been in it from the very beginning for the state of Florida. The very first case that actually happened in Florida happened to be in my county. Well, it was two cases that happened at the same time. It was my county that I serve, as well as Manatee County. And so I got a phone call on a weekend from the governor's office, and you know, once I got the information that we had the first confirmed case in Florida, the governor is going to be coming to our county to make the big announcement, and I needed to set up the press conference for it. That's what I do. So obviously, when you set up a press conference, you have to write talking points, you have to do a lot of communication type stuff, and there was a lot of uncertainties. Not a lot was known, and so I've had to keep up to date with so many changes. There have been times that different information changed 3 or 4 times inside one day, and trying to ensure that I'm keeping updated on the latest, and then taking that and communicating it with my internal staff so they could communicate it with the internal and external customers that we have. It was overwhelming. And the information just kept on changing and changing and changing, and it just completely kept me into that world where I've learned a whole lot. I've seen a lot of changes, and we now know a lot more about the virus because we have a lot of really great public health experts here. I happen to work for the health department here in the state of Florida, where we have a great partnership with some of our universities that have very large public schools of public health. Tampa General Hospital and University of South Florida, they have a close partnership, and we work so close together. And that gave me complete access to a lot of the brains that you saw coming on the show. And that, because of, we hear the briefings all the time. They show us different models, like you saw last night and on the previous shows, giving opinions. And I'm part of those briefings. And so I know these individuals, and so I'm well connected with them. I know the information that's being shared to a lot of the government leaders, and unfortunately, a lot of those decisions are in contrast to the public health advice, which that's a whole nother story. It gets too political that I have to stay away from it, because I'm still a state employee. I know you know where I'm going with that, but you have these experts guiding people, giving the information, but yet we have policies that are being made that is in contrast to what the public health officials are saying. So one of the things I always tell people when I'm talking one-on-one with them is, okay, when you get sick, who do you go to for advice? Go to your doctor. You don't go to
your Facebook friend.
You don't go to Facebook. You might go to WebMD or something like that, but ultimately that's probably not the best place for you to go. Yes, the World Wide Web has a lot of good information on there, but at the same time, it has a lot of bad information on there. And you're not going to go to WebMD to necessarily get an injection. You're going to go to a doctor or a nurse or someone in the healthcare field. So I'm going to trust what the experts that I know are saying. I'm going to go with that. Unfortunately, yes, in Cayman, we do have some doctors, very few, but we do have some that are not necessarily keeping up to date with the latest and greatest. And that's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because we do know what the data shows. It's very, very, very clear what the data shows. And we do have a lot of bright minds that is trying to give us a roadmap to guide us out of this pandemic. One of the things that makes me so upset is that this pandemic, if it was managed with public health really leading, with all, pretty much the way Cayman handled the pandemic, where everyone was just really following the guidance of what public health officials were saying, and everyone just went along with the advice, and we got everyone vaccinated, this thing would have been behind us already. We would have been so much further ahead. However, I do know there's a lot of different views and different people that says, I'm not going to do this because I'm not comfortable. And so it's unfortunate, because when you add that human element to it, there's people that's going to ultimately resist. And so I'm going to do my absolute best to, I'm not trying to force anybody. That's not the intent, but I want to make sure that they are armed with the information to make an informed decision, because ultimately I'm hoping they got enough good Caymanian common sense, or just good common sense, to look at the data and realize that, you know what, there's a point here. And these people know what they're talking about. Yes, there's certain unknowns, but it's a risk worth taking, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. I mean, Kev, it's just so incredibly unfortunate that we even have to have these side conversations about your intent, your motive, when you are spending valuable time, putting really, really important information out there. And the conclusion that I came to, and I'm going to read a few comments and then I've got to wrap up because I do have a 10 o'clock and I know you've got a meeting this morning as well. The really and truthfully, the reason why they're making these personal attacks and putting up all this foolishness is because what we're doing is actually working. It is effective. That is why, and I accept that as someone who is in the public eye, who's, started this CMR platform, that comes with the territory. But I know that these people are upset because we're reaching people. People are getting vaccinated because of the information they've heard on this program. I have people calling me one-on-one. Oh, Miss Sandy, I saw your show on, myocarditis. I saw your show on the Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I have questions, and I'm pointing them the directions of the information. Go and have a look here, read this, read that, and people are coming to their senses in the sense that they're recognizing that there's only one way out of this pandemic that we have right now, and it's not believing all this misinformation that's out there. One person on WhatsApp says, "You effing tell them, girl. Pure fact, sister." Another person says, "Can these screenshots or messages be used to demonstrate that?" Oh, sorry, that was the wrong message. They said, wow, in relation to Isadora, just goes to show how the madness of crowd affects friendships, and preach. It is unfortunate that we have gotten to this point where it seemingly is affecting friendships. My position is this, and I've got friends who I've been friends with for 25 years, and we have a very, very different opinion on this entire situation. And those friendships have been tested long before this, and COVID is not going to impact those friendships, because I know that those people are not going to sit back and allow people to be name calling me based on looks, which is stupid, has nothing to do with the conversation at hand. So this is all about deflecting. And those people, and I'm going to give a big shout out to Mary, for example. Mary's going to know for the past 20 years how I have built my business reputation, and how hard I have worked to get where I am today. And I'm sorry, Isadora, I will be damned. And I want you to listen to me very, very carefully. If I'm going to allow you, the likes of Mario Rankin, seriously, dude, you've never had a successful pot to shit in your entire life. You've never had a successful business. If you think that I'm going to allow people like you to sit back and question my integrity and question where my business funds come from, you have no clue how I've had to work my entire life to get where I am today. And I'm not going to allow you to do it. I'm not going to allow you to try to discredit me in your stupid little groups without addressing it. And if you continue to do it, the next level of addressing it will be a legal response. And I will go there. And so, I think that people feel like they can put anything out in the universe and they can say anything, whether it's true or not, and that's okay and that's fine with them. No, it isn't. It's not fine with me, and it's not okay with me. And I'm disappointed in you, Isadora. I'm really, really disappointed at you. And I hope at night that you can put your head down on your little pillow and be okay. And, it is what it is. I'm going to move on from it because, again, the bigger issue here is trying to bring people correct information. Kevin last night had so many people messaging about last night's show. Last night's show was off the chain good. I even had people saying, "Oh my God, they can't wait until you start talking about with the heart specialist, because they have questions and they have concerns with people in their family who have underlying conditions. They really want to hear what that individual has to say." Folks, it is what it is. People in life have a way of disappointing you. But what I would like to say is be honest. If you can't even be honest when you're trying to have an opposing opinion, to me, that's a red flag that your opinion, which you want to believe is a fact, is probably extremely flawed. So Elizabeth says, "God bless you, Kevin." Alice says, "Exactly, Sandy. We appreciate all that Kevin is doing. K-Man loves you." Al Ray says, "Thank you, Kevin, for all that you've done and bringing various specialists to CMR so that we can be better informed in the pandemic and the vaccine created to stop it." Alma says, "We really appreciate Kevin." Philip says, "These groups sound like an extension of the Sterling Dwayne talk show." I don't know. I don't really listen to his show, so I don't know. Charlene says, "So true, Kevin, a Caymanian gem." Ms. Zelda says, "Very proud of you, Kevin. Your devotion to Cayman, coupled with your access to gained international expertise, makes you a notable Caymanian. We are so thankful for you stepping up to the plate to share your international knowledge with everyone here in the Cayman Islands." Thanks again, Alma. Alma says, "Ask what you can do for your country and not what your country can do for you." Kevin, you have shown this. And, even as I reflect on the election, for example, you guys know that, I had people on this platform who were paying to come on, and there are people who I were really gunning for and thinking, yeah, I think this person could actually do a really good job. They were certainly better than what was there. And, they can really bring a lot to the platform of what's needed in their respective communities and the country as a whole. But listen, when those people stepped out of line and they were like, "Oh, we signed a contract and then we're going to flip and we're going to do something else," you guys saw my passion. You saw how I hold their foot to the fire. Because for me, this isn't about personalities and whether I like you or I don't like you. There's a bigger overarching issue here. And whether that was the formation of the government and putting a government together that's in the best interest of this country, or even now as we are looking at, mounting a COVID response and moving forward to reopening our borders, what could be more important than that? Me sitting down in a little corner trying to call people names, I don't have time for that. We have a very important, we're coming at a coming up upon the riskiest time. And if you watched the show last night, you appreciate what the risk is and what's involved and what we have on the table here, folks. You know, we need to be focused on that. All this misinformation is trying to muddle the water and trying to muddle your brains, and it just doesn't make any sense. So thank you, Miss Elma. Celine says some of the comments I saw while watching the briefing on YouTube yesterday were very disrespectful.
Yep. And so I want to say, I know last night's show it got a bit technical. I remember when he was showing me the presentation a little bit before that he customized for the Cayman Islands, and I was looking at the first graphic. I'm like, my eyes went crisscross. I'm like, how do I interpret this? And see, part of my job is what I do here is I take the brains, the scientific brain, and I try to coach them and try to help them put it in a way that people could understand. And I believe Dr. Edwin Michael, he mastered that with able to break something so technical down and put it in something that most people could understand. It was still a very high level type of discussion, but it was done and presented in a way to make sure people could understand. There are always what we call nuances. There's ways, I mean, no one has an exact crystal ball, but based on, you know, people who are data scientists, they have a way to be able to do certain probable predictions and different things. But it's only as good as the data that we receive. And I saw that the Premier did say he will get that data, because I did ask for the data and it was denied. They said it was not publicly available. And I'm like, why? I mean, that just makes no sense to me. But either way, it looks like we might be able to get that data, because we could have something that's even more customized.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. There are people that pay big money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, for experts like Dr. Edwin Michael to do these sort of things. Dr. Edwin Michael, he said, when he said, oh, the Cayman Islands, absolutely out. He was so excited to get involved because Cayman Islands happens to be one of the only places in the world to manage the pandemic so well. And we could, and this is my future hope, is that the world will now, or Cayman will go down in history as the one little place that really managed COVID-19 well, and we be used as an example for future pandemics that ultimately will happen in the future. However, we have to make sure we get it right. We have to listen to the expertise. We have to follow the public health guidance. And Cayman could be known as not just a beautiful place to visit, not just as a banking place, but a place that follows public health and saved so many lives and does things right to protect its people, putting people over politics. Not anywhere else in the world could really say that at this present time. Nowhere that I know about.
Exactly. And Kevin, thank you so much. I do have to run. I've got to actually get to court this morning. There's a case that I'm following. But again, thank you so much. We're going to see you on Tuesday. Tuesday's a cardiologist, right?
Yes, Tuesday is the cardiologist. You also have someone from a cardiologist from Health City that's also joining that. I forgot to mention that last night. We have one from Cleveland Clinic and another one from a New Jersey hospital. So either way, they're all cardiologists that's going to be on that show and really focus on it. You know, there's the myocarditis talk, as well as people that have heart issues. I am also a part of the Cayman Heart Fund. So, of course, I have a big interest in heart, going through my own heart issues. So I know there's a lot of people that, you know, would be interested in that show, which is why I made sure to put that as one of the topics to discuss.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. So again, everyone, thanks for your comments. Next week on Monday, I might just do a separate conversation on this expat association, because I don't even want to give them a whole lot of time either. They're another bunch of trolls that are really just ridiculous. But they did decide to email me yesterday. Somebody named Joe decides to email me from this expat association. And so I want to talk about that because in some ways it's kind of comical and stupid. And, you know, we discuss all things that are happening in the community. I don't really hide anything from you guys, to be honest. You know, it is what it is. Carol, you posted something earlier about the lateral flow test being a lot more reliable than they had thought. Send me that link personally, because I do want to read that article and see where that data is coming from. And then we can probably share that on next week's programming as well. So again, Kevin, please have a good weekend. I hope that you can get some rest this weekend, because of course we need you here in CMR. So rest up, kick up your feet, watch some TV on Saturday, and then go shopping for mommy later on Saturday afternoon.
All right, everyone, you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, folks, that's none other than Kevin Watler there in Lakeland, Florida. A true Caymanian at heart, cares about the people of the Cayman Islands, doesn't want us to go through what him and his colleagues have been trying to survive and get through there in Lakeland, Florida and beyond. Lots of unnecessary deaths, lots of unnecessary hospitalizations. Now we have a tool. And when I sit here and I talk about my passion for vaccination, folks, no one can pay me for that. They could drop $1 million check in my lap. And by the way, where's the money? You're getting paid for it. Where's my money? At some point, I'm going to go to Isadora and tell her she better give me a friggin' paycheck. If you claiming that somebody pay me, I want to see the money. Because there's nothing there. You people are just being stupid and you're being ridiculous, right? So, maybe, like I said, Mario makes those comments. He's the one who started this rumor because he can be bought because he's been bought his entire... Mario, you're going to force me to go to court and pull up that lawsuit from CIDB. Remember when you and McKeever were like this? That's how you got approved for that $1 million loan. $1 million came on. And y'all think I'm joking? Keep it up. Zelda, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Miss Charlene, Miss Celine, Mitzi, Irvelyn, everybody else have a wonderful weekend. Y'all forcing me to bring out receipts, and I will surely bring out receipts. I have never gotten any political favors from nobody. I've not even gotten a job because of politics. Other people have gotten contracts clearing up heavy metal and scrap metal after Ivan because of political contacts. That's why they're pissed off at this current government, because this current government would not give them those kind of kickbacks. And that is why they are so upset, because they were looking to get their pockets lined for the next 4 months and it just hasn't worked out for them. It's just ridiculous. Jonathan says you get enough views on Facebook for them to give you a little something, I'm sure. Who's they? Facebook? Facebook don't pay you for views. That's not how Facebook works. YouTube, if you apply to be monetized, you might get, if you get millions of followers and 50,000 views. You see, a lot of people don't even understand how any of this works. I don't get a dime from YouTube. I don't get a dime from Facebook. In fact, I'm paying Facebook if I have to promote or push something on their platform. That's how it works. You got to make sure you understand how these things work, folks. Yes, CMR is an incorporated company and it's now a business. I have to pay employees whether CMR makes a dime or not. I have people on the payroll that do get paid. I would love it right now if I had the financial wherewithal to be able to hand Kevin a check to say, you know what, Kev? Treat yourself and your family to a really nice Christmas. Wouldn't that be awesome? I wish that we could set up a GoFundMe page to raise some money for Kevin, because all of the wonderful work, I know he hasn't asked for it. He's not doing it for that reason. But wouldn't it be nice if we could show our appreciation in some meaningful way? Anyway, I got a 10 o'clock. You guys have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful weekend. Folks, I always was taught to be appreciative of when people do things, do the right thing, and for the right reasons. And I don't know about how y'all were raised, but I can tell you, Aunt Lottie didn't raise me to do things for just a paycheck. That's why I get up every day and I talk about community issues. Why I'm constantly outing these child molesters and talking about them and trying to protect your children. Who's paying me for that narrative? That has been my most passionate message ever for 20 plus years. I've written about it. I've talked about it through the wazoo to the point where I'm sick and tired of talking about it, and I keep talking about it. So I'm so passionate about who's paying me to talk about that. It's just stupid and ridiculous, the things that people create in their own heads to try to justify their stupidity. And you don't get to come at me and justify your stupidity without a response. So yes, I will respond to you. Get your lives together. Try to educate yourself and get accurate information. Stop the personal attacks, right? Now, if we're talking facts, so if I say to you, how is it possible that you've got people in your leadership of your pro-choice movement who have put crack cocaine in their veins, and now they're so overly concerned about what's in a vaccine? To me, that is a legitimate question. I'm not trying to attack that person. Everybody knows she was a crackhead, right? I'm not looking at her physical appearance and making fun of her. But that's how low they have to go to try to come at the other side that is based on factual information. You see the difference? The difference is if I talk about Mario, the things that I'm telling you are facts, provable facts. Y'all want to see the lawsuit? We can get the documents. You see, that's the difference. They can put a narrative out there that, oh, she's getting paid. Show me the evidence. Okay? Show me the evidence. That's the difference. You're entitled to an opinion, but you're not entitled to misinformation and trying to put fake information out into the universe and people. Because like I said, that's when, like Dr. Frank, you end up with a lawsuit. And poor Dr. Frank is so confused now by the process that up to last night, he's emailing the administrative staff at the courts talking about, oh, he doesn't think that he's been properly served. Well, you know what they responded to him and said this morning? Let me just read you this email. Just came in this morning. And they basically said, sir, they confirm receipt of your email because he's saying, oh, he thinks this is a whole hoax and he's never been served any documents and this, that, next thing. The documents haven't even been filed according to him. And they say we're unable to give legal advice and therefore suggest you seek legal advice from an attorney in relation to this matter. The relevant cause number is 191 of 2001. So in other words, it has been properly filed despite what you think in your little head. And the plaintiff is required to serve the relevant documents on you, including the summons referred to below. Not only was the relevant documents served on Dr. Frank, but proof of service is something you have to obtain from the process server. And all of that was done and submitted. But yet the man claims that he doesn't believe that a lawsuit has been filed. Well, you guys don't know when you're standing before the judge what the situation is. All right. Renita says they're looking power and fame, all those who spread information. Well, child, I don't know what they're looking for. And yes, Zelda, I would love to be able to monetarily, because everybody's trying to pay their bills and everyone's trying to live. And I know that a little something in Kevin's pocket could probably make him have a decent Christmas. So I'm going to try to see what I can do. But you know what? Right now, I have a single mother who has rent that she needs to pay that she hasn't been able to pay. And I'm out there begging to try to get money to help her. And I'm going to try to send her $400 of my own hard-earned money today. Isadora, when was the last time you did that for anybody? When was the last time you looked at a Caymanian mother with 2 children, another one on the way, no job, trying to make ends meet, trying to pay her rent so she can have a roof over her head, and you offered to pay her rent? Oh, you're making $6,000 a month at a law firm. Were you helping anybody with that $6,000 a month at a law firm from that job that you just lost? I'm just curious. You see, this is where y'all come into this community after 8 years of being on this island and you get your status, and then you really start to insult me because you don't care about Caymanians. The first shit that happens here, you will jump on that plane and go back right where you come from, status or no status. And this is what pisses me off. Not everybody's like that, but I know enough of you who are like that. You don't care about nothing in Cayman or anyone in Cayman but yourselves. And when the fool Caymanians jump up against each other and pulling each other down, right? And you're in the mix as a status holder. Oh, you're just all too happy about that. Don't come for me, you know. I'm not a regular Caymanian who gonna sit back and allow people to abuse me. No, honey child, it don't go so. It don't go nowhere near so. Right? This is where now people who really know that I'm a Georgetowner to the core would have a little bit better sense than that. And if you come to me, I'm gonna set you straight. Simple, simple, and simple. Anyway, people, have a good one. Oh Lord, here's Zelda now. Of all the cases, by the way, Zelda, that one is coming up for appeal. So maybe you should stay tuned to see what the appeal court has to say. Stay tuned. That one's not over. But yes, that judgment does exist. The judge said, oh, you went too far. Well, we'll see what the appeal court says. But These other people think that they can go as far as they want and there'll be no consequences. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So believe me when I tell you, just like Dr. Frank, he went way further than I went with Matthew Leslie, and he thinks he's going to get away with it without any consequences. There will be consequences, both civil and criminally, for Dr. Frank, because the RCIPS has that case as well. So I hope y'all be jumping up when he loses that case and he's found guilty. Anywho, y'all have a beautiful day. See y'all on Monday.